Thank you guys for coming. Yeah, I'm here to introduce Sara Maillacheruvu. First, she is a second year in the college studying English and South Asian languages and civilizations. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, has spent most of her life in the Midwest. She enjoys running, playing guitar, and chocolate cake. Sara is excited to share a piece about family, identity, and belonging with you all tonight. So I was given 17 pretty short pieces, and I got sort of very neurotic about reading and ranking them, which is hard. I won't indulge you and say that they were all really great, but they were all pretty great. A lot of them were about sex, which Sara's is not, but it's something that people are not very comfortable talking about. So I actually thought that was pretty neat. And again, ranking writing is so subjective, but Sara's, they were submitted anonymously, so I didn't know this was Sara, but it stood out just in the way I was very warmly introduced to a religion, a culture, a home, and a family that I'd never experienced before. I think it was remarkable the way a lot of really great nonfiction pieces are for what was not in it. There was no navel gazing, which is really hard when you're writing about yourself. I know, and I failed at that. No thesaurus words, no kind of philosophizing, no beige-colored conclusions. What there was a very easy, precise, fluid language, a lot of surprising details that just let you inhabit a moment, and a narrator who brings you into a family dynamic that was foreign to me and yet familiar as a WASP. I'm pretty well versed in a number of people in a contained space not talking about their feelings. A family dynamic where people love each other and navigate each other and are trying to be decent to each other, and finding that difficult sometimes. And there's also, not to give it away, there's a urine-scented incense stick. So Sara, look forward to your reading.
Thank you. I was studying on the floor of our living room, books and papers fanned out around my wide hips. It was a wintry Saturday morning, and I was a senior in high school. My mother walked across the shag carpet, basket full of laundry on her hip. "What you doin', Sara?" she asked. "I'm studying, Mom." I probably rolled my eyes sulkily. "Want to go to Bergner's later today? I have a coupon, $10 off any purchase." We had a habit of cashing in on those coupons with $11 or $12 purchases, coughing over the extra couple of bucks. The coupons have weird restrictions. You can't buy anything on clearance, you can't buy candy, you can't buy underwear, don't even try to buy that $13 double pack of wool socks. Once, we walked around the store for over an hour, dragging item after item up to the register, only to have Karen or Carrie or Christine tell us, "I'm sorry, you can't use a coupon on this. Better luck next time, you cheap, sorry bastards." My mother eventually bought me a pair of gold dangly earrings with little leaves wrought into them. When I showed them to her, she gave them, then me, a disapproving look, but shrugged her shoulders. "Okay, let's get them," she said. I could tell that she thought that they were ugly, but she relented, probably because we'd been in Bergner's far too long for her to properly disagree. A couple years later, she told me that they had looked nice with the dress that I had worn to Easter Mass. I lay there on my stomach, tapping my blue highlighter on the carpet. "Maybe," I sighed. "I have to get through a couple chapters of bio. We're learning about DNA replication, and there's so much to memorize." I could never wrap my mind around the zipping and unzipping of the double helixes, the ligases that piece them back together, and how that after each replication, the DNA got shorter. "Okay, well, just let me know." She walked away with the laundry basket, accidentally towing my notebook with her pink house slippers. My father was on the couch in the living room, paging through a stack of exams he didn't want to grade. Red marred the feud that he'd already forced himself through. He exploded out of the sofa. "You just have no respect." "What?" my mother and I said at the same time. "You guys, you just don't listen to what I tell you." "Don't step on paper," I say. "Do you listen?" "No. No one ever listens. God." This was a point my father began stressing when I was in middle school. "Books," he told me and my sister, "contain knowledge. Saraswati is the patron goddess of knowledge. If your feet touch paper, you have to apologize. I've apologized to crumpled rubrics in 17 magazines more times than I can count." "I'm sorry, books," I mutter as I pick them off the floor and splay them over the water stains in our coffee table. One lizard-like teacher in high school would stand on stacks of old history textbooks in the hallways during passing periods, wearing a St. Louis Cardinals windbreaker, waving a crooked pointer stick that looked like a twig that he'd found on the lawn. I wanted to jab his twig into his stomach and tell him to apologize to the books. My father huffed off. Before he stomped up the stairs, my mother managed to say, "Krishna, I didn't mean to." He heard her and acknowledged the apology with his final stomps up the stairs. "He just gets so hot-headed sometimes," she sighed as she left the room with the dirty socks. I returned to my biology textbook, paper still fanned around me. Lying on my stomach, I wiggled my calloused toes against the shag of the carpet, eyes tracing the words on the page. The DNA unwinds, polymerase binds to the 5' strand, continually adds A's and C's, G's and T's. The 3' strand is pieced together with primase and Okazaki fragments. Strands are winded back up into their new helix foil. "I'm sorry, books," I whispered. I decided I'd go to Bergner's later. A couple years later, I traveled home from college on an oddly warm February weekend. My father picked me up from Chicago. He and I took turns driving, stopping for pizza, then eating it slice by slice as we bounded down I-55. He and my mother enjoyed arguing about whether I-80 or I-55 was a quicker way to get to our city planted squarely in the middle of Illinois. I never cared, so long as I could sit in the passenger seat, watching soybeans blur into green blobs as we bumbled along. When my father and I arrived home, I walked into the kitchen and asked my mother how she was doing. She didn't give me the usual, her long stories about work, about the preschoolers, about her crazy coworker named Pam. "I'm fine," she said, sighing. "Just fine?" "Well, your dad's really mad at me." "What happened?" She told me about their most recent argument, which had exploded into a feud. My father kept his puja room in the basement. Most Hindu families have one. Usually, it's a closet filled with statues of Vishnu and Shiva, Parvati and Ganesh. Incense, too. My father had wanted his puja room to be in the living room. He could easily transform the china cabinet into the God hutch. Plus, he argued, there was a massive painting of the Last Supper in the dining room, and little crosses were scattered throughout the house. Why couldn't Parvati have her place in the sun? My mother turned him down. She's not anti-Hindu. She goes to Gita group with him every Sunday, sort of the Hindu equivalent to Bible study. She goes to lectures by swamis and gurus. But the house was hers to decorate. She decided where the Last Supper painting would go, and where those cross-stitches of birds that looked like blue house slippers ought to be hung. My father retreated to the basement with his pictures of Rama and Krishna, pictures printed from the computer and framed in cheap black plastic. He transformed the basement into a sanctuary, dragging little bronze statues of the gods and goddesses into a small, wood-paneled corner of the house. Every morning, my father wakes up at 4:30 and performs worship. He goes through prayers, recites verses, and lights incense and oil lamps. He brings up a handful of blessed almonds as prasad for everyone to eat with breakfast. A communion of sorts, except instead of a cardboard wafer once a week, he gives us crunchy almonds every day. Sometimes he plays a CD of chanting swamis after he finishes his prayers. Om, 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 the swamis sing slowly in their low, long voices. As a child, I was afraid of these chanting swamis. It sounded like they were in a dungeon, oming to get free. Om, 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 let us out, let us out. They don't scare me anymore. Their low, long voices remind me of home. When my father plays the CD in summer, he claims that the music lures over brown bunnies that live in our backyard in the nearby ravine. They sit in front of the screen door, enraptured by the oming swamis, ears perked with a focused mellowness. Stopping by the door during her Saturday morning laundry ritual, my mother confirmed my father's claim. She saw the bunnies lined up listening, enamored with the deep dark ohms and the swirling incense. One morning, my father lit a special type of incense. It was from an ashram of one of his favorite swamis. As my mother stuffed dirty socks and underwear into the laundry machine, her nose perked at the smell. She threw in some detergent and inhaled the incense. It didn't smell pleasant. It smelled, she thought, like urine. After my father finished his prayers and brought the almonds upstairs, he ate breakfast over the local paper and a cup of sweet milky tea. Some high school basketball team lost, some other team won. There was probably a pancake breakfast at the Knights of Columbus. Some city councilmen said something stupid. My mother had already solved the jumble, letters penciled into the bubbles in her teacher's script. He started on the crossword. She happened upon him in the kitchen after she'd tossed another load into the dryer. "You know that incense, Krishna?" she said. "What?" he said, looking up from the Journal Star. "That incense you're burning?" "Humph," he grunted, eyes gliding back to the print. "Well, you know," she paused. "It kind of smells like pee." He was incensed. That was not just any incense. That was incense from Swami Dayananda Saraswati. That was holy incense. He stormed off, Journal Star in hand. He probably finished the crossword and started an episode of Fringe, his latest sci-fi binge. She told me this, minutes after I had walked into the house. My father had disappeared upstairs, probably checking email or finishing that episode of Fringe. I told her that she probably shouldn't have told him that. She should have smelled the urine incense, let the scent soak into the clothes air drying by his puja corner, and hold her tongue. It was from Swami Dayananda's ashram, and we knew how important he was to my father. The next morning, Saturday morning, as I stuffed the duffel bag full of dirty clothes I'd been too lazy to wash at college into the laundry machine, I smelt the incense. It did smell like urine. It also smelled like home.